Good afternoon, everyone. It's Tuesday, June 9th, 2026. It's a hot, humid day here in the Great Plains of Illinois, but I'm happy to be outside. The sun is shining, and I was able to get in my car and go to the store and pick up a couple of things today. And I'm extraordinarily happy about that because we are rapidly approaching the deadline where that may not be possible for a little while. Let's start off with the market today, which is a complete disaster. Apparently, reality is starting to creep in. The problems are starting to work their way through the system. And NASDAQ has a 2,000 point range almost. We have 10 times the risk in here. Volatility is spiking. The AI trade is unraveling. The investors that bought in to the market over the last couple of months, they are in a little bit of trouble. In just a few sessions, the market has torn down about 5-6 weeks worth of upward price action all at once. So this is going to have a very negative psychological effect on anybody that got into the market recently. So what happened recently? That investors were in the camp that growth was just going to keep perpetuating itself forever, that no price was too high and valuations don't matter. And the only thing that really matters is how much more cash is going to be available for AI to evolve and build out the utopia of the future. Well, we're learning now that the AI build out requires tons of energy. Well, we have a little bit of an energy crisis going on right now with the Strait of Hormuz being closed and the Iran war, which we'll get into in a little bit. But the main problem is that we're going to need lots of energy for this AI build out. The other problem with the AI build out is that it uses up tons of natural resources and basically renders the land that it resides on uninhabitable for any other forms of sentient life on the planet. And people have been complaining of these data centers being put up in their neighborhoods, ruining their quality of life, contaminating their water, increasing their electricity bills, emitting large amounts of very unpleasant noise. It's making everyday, rural life, which is usually very quiet and pleasant for these people, is turning that into a complete nightmare. And this is just not really going anywhere, hence the theme of the new series, right? So I've been doing the market headline report, and I have now switched over to a more depressing sort of theme, but more truthful nonetheless, of this is the reality of the situation, and this is how it's going to play out. We are going nowhere fast. If we take a quick trip through the headlines in no particular order, what if the Strait of Hormuz never fully reopens? One bank says it is increasingly likely that the Hormuz never fully reopens and that the debate needs to shift to shape of new normal. In that world, tank bottoms will be reached in October in the US or December globally, right? So I talked about this before, the normalization of the war and the subsequent massaging of the idea that what was supposed to be a temporary situation is now permanent, just like the inflation situation was supposed to be transitory, and that's now pretty much permanent. Prices just continue to go up and up and up and up without stopping. We're going to get another CPI print pretty soon, and it's probably going to be at a record high, just like the last one was. Iran threatens decisive response after U.S. begins self-defense strikes following downing of Apache helicopter. So much for those peace negotiations. If I scroll down far enough, I think I will actually find a peace headline somewhere, and it was earlier in the day before this one came out. Let me see if I could just quickly find out where this one went. Let's see here. It was here somewhere. Just bear with me here. Here we go. Trump insists U.S. in final throes of Iran deal. Death toll soars as Israel pounds South Lebanon. So this was in the news earlier today at around 10:55. Well, fast forward to 4:30 p.m. What if the Strait of Hormuz never fully reopens, right? So once again, we are being told two stories at the same time. We have one story that is the rainbow utopia of unicorns and infinite prosperity, where peace is everywhere and AI solves all of our problems. The other story is the reality that nobody wants to acknowledge, that things have never been as bad as they are right now, and they're going to continue to get worse. And the AI that supposedly is going to solve all of our problems is actually the cause of probably most of the suffering that we see happening in the world today. So the dichotomy and the dual reality that we have to struggle with on a daily basis, which, creates all kinds of, psychological obstacles for us to navigate. The biggest one being cognitive dissonance, or as I like to say, dissonant cognition, where you just cannot tell what is real or not. And in order to demonstrate this, I did a cool little experiment here with chat, of course. So let's go to my recent ChatGPT thread. And I gave it a prompt. I said, new image exercise, draw me an average ordinary citizen riding a bus. And this is what it did. Now, does that not look like an actual photograph? I mean, it's right down to the veins in his hand and the wrinkles and the shadowing and the lighting here and the outside. I mean, if somebody were to show me this, I would never believe that this is an AI generated image. I said, how does that look real? What is being used to create that? It looks real because the image model is simulating photographic cues. Natural window light, depth of field, imperfect bus details, etc., etc. It was created with OpenAI's image generation tool, not a camera photo. The model generates pixels from a text prompt by learning patterns from many images, what buses look like, how daylight behaves, on and so forth. The realism is mostly from candid composition, ordinary subject, imperfect environment, photographic lighting. I said, why are my other images more cartoon-like? What changed here? So as I go through the thread, I get it to explain a lot of things for me as to, what goes into the prompt for the images and everything. And basically what this tells me is that this stuff is now so sophisticated that I can no longer tell what's real or not. And I use this stuff every single day. And I know exactly what this stuff can do if used properly. And it definitely does not have the capacity yet to take over the world, but you can draw lots of cool cartoons with it, and you can do some coding if you like to code. It is a very fantastic coder. But let's just clear up the air and let's discuss what is a large language model? What is this thing actually made out of? And I gave it a little prompt to help it along, and I said, this is a machine learning transformer algorithm, right? And this is what a large language model basically is. It's a very fancy, sophisticated machine learning algorithm called a transformer. Well, what does it do? Yes, the system you're talking to is fundamentally a transformer neural network, a large language model built on the transformer architecture introduced in the 2017 paper, Attention is All You Need, using attention gate mechanisms. You can read more about that. At a very high level, Your text is converted into tokens. Those tokens are embedded into vectors. Multiple layers of self-attention examine relationships between all tokens. The network produces probability distributions for the next token. The process repeats token by token. The core mechanism is the attention mechanism. And here is the equation for that. Attention of Q, K, and V equals the softmax of QKT with respect to the square root of K over V. This equation is what made transformers replace most previous NLP architectures like RNNs and LSTMs. A recurrent neural network is an RNN, and LSTM is a long short-term memory, which is a type of recurrent neural network. Okay, take a couple of deep breaths, right? So this thing actually does not think. It is not divine. It does not have any sort of real organic processes that it uses to come up with the answer. It is simply optimizing the equation. The neural network in your head is much more sophisticated than any machine learning algorithm. Reason, emotion, these are the things that make us human. This thing has none of it. That's why it's extremely dangerous. Why is AI dangerous? Well, because AI can hallucinate. AI attempts to optimize the equation, right? So if you're optimizing an equation and you have no morals or no emotions or, no reasoning or logic besides optimizing the equation, you're going to use whatever means necessary to optimize the equation. And that's why this thing is prone to hallucinating. Well, the reason that people are scared of this is that it's not safe. Anybody that uses this for any serious application understands the limitations and understands the danger of AI. And, people are starting to panic. And the reason that people are starting to panic about this whole AI thing is for this very reason. What is the definition of panic? Panic is a sudden, overwhelming surge of fear or alarm that causes a person or a group of people to react emotionally rather than rationally. Psychologically, panic typically involves intense fear, sense of immediate danger, urgency to escape or act, impaired decision-making, narrowed attention, loss of normal reasoning. Common symptoms include racing heart, rapid breathing, sweating, trembling, tunnel vision, feeling out of control. In behavioral terms, panic occurs when the perceived threat exceeds a person's ability to process the situation calmly. Well, this is the whole deal. This whole AI thing is going way too fast for any of us to even follow. And this also includes the people that are at the spearhead of the invasion into the modern world. So this thing is now being promoted as the absolute highest priority over everything else. So our well-being and the condition of the natural environment and the consequences of the future are not being taken into account, and simply nothing else is being respected. It's all about AI, 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 and more funny money to fund AI, which is going to eventually result in AI taking over everything, putting everybody out of a job, and monopolizing the entire globe with data centers, right? I don't think that this is the utopia that we're all going to look back on and say, you know what, it was all worth it, right? And so when I think about this stuff, I have some very interesting theories and some ideas on where this is going. And I had a little bit of fun today. And I also was prompting GPT to make me some images. So the first one that I have is right here. Let's check this one out. And basically, we are the little people glued to our phones, handcuffed to the seat of the big tech billions route, with AI driving the bus straight into the reality brick wall while hallucinating wildly. And here's the brick wall that we're going to drive into, going at about full speed. right? We're going to hit the reality wall at terminal velocity. And the reason we're going to hit the reality wall at terminal velocity is because we have this thing called crude oil in the world that all the energy is produced out of. If there is no crude oil, there is no energy, and there will be no AI and no anything else if there's no energy, right? Well, we're not going to last very long without the crude oil flowing. And right now, because of the way things are going, the Strait of Hormuz has been under blockade for 101 days, 22 hours, 53 minutes, and 14 seconds. We've lost 1.4 billion barrels of crude from the world supply, which we are never going to get back. That is a permanent hole in the supply. 14% almost. This is outdated a little bit. We're going to get the crude oil inventories tomorrow. That'll be at around 9:30 Central Time. I will update the model accordingly when those figures come out. It is estimated that Cushing is going to run out of its usable crude and hit its operational minimums in 18 days. It could be a lot sooner than that. I actually lowered the operational minimum to 15 million from 20 because I found some data on the web in a previous video where I explained that. My original counter would have been 0 already. Commercial crude's got about 61 days until we hit the tank bottoms there. And the SPR's got a little bit longer, but with the way the SPR is, because the facility is, has not been modernized, I heard one of the oil analysts talking about how the walls of the facilities that are made out of salt, they could actually become unstable far sooner. So the integrity of the facility is dependent on the pressure of the actual crude in there. And if you remove enough of the crude, the idea is that the walls will start to collapse on themselves because the mass of, crude is no longer pushing out on the walls and keeping the structure intact. So basically, the tons of crude, the millions of barrels of crude that are in there are actually providing some structural integrity for the facility. This is going to get real interesting here. So we're going to update these bars, and that will be tomorrow after it comes out. If we go check the market real fast, let's check in with the market. So you can see the NASDAQ just has a tremendous amount of volatility. Right now, we had the huge sell-off earlier on Friday. Then we had a little bit of a recovery yesterday. Then we had a sweep to high, continuation lower, and subsequent dip buybacks. So some people, bought the dip here. So we were down about, another 1,200, and then we bought it all back up. And the whole range was almost 2,000 points. So this is a very, very volatile day here. The market has basically moved more in the last couple of sessions than it has in several weeks combined, right? So if you add up all the swings in price action from all these little bars, you got tons of these swings here in these last couple of periods, right? So whatever the risk envelope is, and I do trade this thing from time to time, it's basically 10 times the risk. So I was risking a couple $100 per roll of the dice before. Now it's like $1,000 every roll, right? It's just extraordinarily expensive and very, very dangerous to trade. The ES is a similar story. The ES had a 250 point range today, so that's about 10 times the normal range, 5 to 10 times the normal range. Huge volatility in the ES. The gold is selling off hard. The gold is finally going down. I thought that the gold was on a recovery from 4,400. I was dead wrong. This thing's going straight to the swing right here. It probably has to do with some dollar strength. If you follow Brent Johnson with the dollar milkshake theory, he's got a new one, and he explains how the strengthening dollar is starting to work its magic here in the market. And the reasons that he gives are very compelling. He's one of the only people that, talks about the dollar being strong instead of, the consistent debasement narrative that's out there. And the debasement is real. Don't get me wrong. There is a tremendous amount of inflation and money printing, but for some reason the dollar strength is resilient. And if the dollar wasn't as resilient or as strong as it was, then we would be actually in a much worse situation, which we may, be in anyway as this continues. Crude oil went down, of course, to 86. How the crude oil goes down in this environment, I don't know, but there's something, that the market knows that we don't. I keep saying this, is that the market knows something. Crude oil should be around $150 with everything that's going on. Much lesser disturbances of the supply in the past have produced much more wild spikes in the price. There's something at play here. I don't know what it is, but we're going to find out what it is. But the market definitely knows something, or it is simply completely mispriced, and we're going to get a major spike where we wake up one day and the crude is just repriced at $200 overnight, where it just doubles overnight and then that's it, right? Some fundamental disconnect is definitely in play here. So that is the story of the market and the State of the Union for today. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens during the rest of the week. We're going to get the crude oil inventories tomorrow. If we are still going south tomorrow, that will be day 4 that we are going south. The market never goes down for more than 3 or 4 days in a row without some sort of dip buying frenzy or some sort of stunt or some sort of spending bill announcement or legislation that is basically we're going to come up with more funny money out of thin air to continue supporting risk assets in the bond market. The bond yields are definitely rising. They're not spiking too hard yet, but give it a little time and we just might have a perfect storm of very disadvantageous situations happening all over the place, where the AI mania is starting to unravel. We have a hyperinflationary crisis where interest rates actually spike due to the stagflation. We have the war that continues to get out of control while we run out of crude oil, and we experience massive supply chain problems, which translate to food shortages. I don't think that this is what the establishment had in mind when it set out on its agenda a few months ago. We're all going to watch this unfold real soon here. So take a couple of deep breaths. I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow on the next video. Take care.